the death of the truck is a little cheaper, I guess. I was a little bit more on the nose in those days, and I said, this truck's like Godzilla, let's get a dinosaur roar in there when the truck, turns over and dies. It's the same sound I use when the shark dies in Jaws. I took the very same sound effect, the same moan that I had put into Duel when the truck is rolling over, comes out of that big cloud and continues its fall. That's where I put the prehistoric kind of groan. I took that same sound effect. It's kind of almost like a little bit of nostalgia, and I stuck that same sound effect into the last scene where the shark is blown up and the big carcass is sinking to the bottom of the ocean. That sound reoccurs there. I put the sound at the same point that the fin of the shark comes out of the cloud of blood, like the truck came out of the cloud of dirt. And it was a little bit of a self-congratulatory pat on the back, but it was also kind of like saying, gee, thank you, Duel, for putting me on the map. Gee, thanks for giving me a career. And thanks for getting me started making movies, because without Duel, I wouldn't have gotten the green light to make Sugarland Express when I did. So, one thing always helps another, and I was just sort of turning backwards in time, having finished Jaws, to say thank you, Duel, for letting me have Jaws.
Well, it's about time, Charlie. My God.
I see Billy Goldenberg's contribution to Duel as being very important because he didn't do a conventional score. He used African instruments, and he had low drums, and he had kind of like tubular bells. It was so experimental and so courageous to have a score like that, especially on an ABC Movie of the Week. I thought Billy did one of the best scores he had ever written for Duel. I think he was very inspired by the story and didn't want to do a conventional score, didn't want a string section. He didn't want horns. He wanted it to be almost a kind of atmospheric feeling. He added so many layers of creepiness with his music that it really brought Duel up even further. I have a couple of appearances in the movie. For one thing, I needed to be in the car sometimes with Dennis, so I sat in the back seat way over to the left. And on the television frame, I was fine, but when the film was eventually released overseas, on certain 1:8:5 aspect ratios, you can see part of me sitting in the back seat. They had to eventually take some of those prints and do a whole field blow-up to get me out of the movie. But there are other things they couldn't get me out. I didn't realize it. I'm inside the phone booth, reflected in the glass of the phone booth, when Dennis Weaver goes in to make the call to report the truck, trying to call the police. And there I am with the script in my hand, kind of like looking up and down, making sure that all the lines are right. And I'm in the phone booth, and there was no coverage. And by not seeing dailies every day, I didn't have the luxury of coming back the next day and, filming it over again. It had huge ratings then. The ratings today would have been titanic, because today there are so many other distractions that the 4 big networks don't get the kind of ratings that the 3 big networks used to get in the 70s, when it was getting 35-40 share was something you just did if you were a hit show. That wasn't extraordinary. If you got a 60 rating for Roots, that was extraordinary. Today's shows are actually renewed with ratings of 10 to 12 to 14. They're renewed, and back then if you had a 14 share, you weren't renewed, you were gone after 2 episodes. So when the market share was larger and more people were watching just those 3 networks, we got a huge number. And then when the film went overseas as a feature film, after I went out and shot some extra footage to expand it to the legal limit of 90 minutes, they said you couldn't release a film overseas unless it was 90, and we were 74, so I went back and I shot that scene of Dennis Weaver, and it's a scene I kind of made up. I thought it would be a kind of cool scene. Dennis Weaver comes to a train track, and a train is passing, and the truck suddenly pulls up, appears behind him, and starts to push him into the moving freight train. And that was one of the expansion sequences for the Europeans' release. Duel unlocked the gateways of the continent of Europe. I never had been to Europe before, and I went to Europe for the first time. It was amazing. You know, nonstop flight from New York to Rome. Got to see the Spanish Steps, stay at the Hassler Hotel, and meet Federico Fellini the next day, who had just seen Duel. And I'm very proud of a picture I have that was taken the day after he saw Duel and has his arm around me. We're standing in front of the Grand Hotel. I look like I'm as skinny as a rail, you know, and he looks as thin as he ever looked. And we're standing together, and we became friends from that moment on and had infrequent but still contact from that time on.
Oh, no, please, no.
I had sort of made a movie that was kind of the roadkill equivalent to High Noon, and the Europeans were reading in all this esoteric, abstract symbolism about class warfare in America, which kind of haunted me, because when my first feature came out, which was about cars, again, the same critics said that Spielberg was attenuating those themes and carrying them even further. I was proving their point by making the Sugarland Express. But that's fine, because you know what it teaches you to do? It teaches you not to think so reasonably. It taught me to think a little more in the abstract. It really instructed me not to just look at something and say, okay, everybody is bound to see this picture the way I see this picture. We're going to see the same colors, the same sky and horizon. We're going to interpret this exactly alike. And I learned very early on that nobody ever sees the same picture the same way. It's impossible. I'm probably not the best kind of judge of how many sides I have as a picture maker. One film I can say, I indulge myself in that. That was for me, or that's for the audience. That's popcorn, and that's brain food. I don't know if I'm the best judge of that, really, because I take all my movies seriously. I took Raiders of the Lost Ark seriously. I had to. I had to believe the story was really happening. If I thought it was a romp and a confection, then the film would have been a parody of the serials from the 1950s and 40s. But I took that story very, very seriously, and I wanted the audience to believe that Indiana Jones was actually going after the lost Ark of the Covenant, and when that Ark opened, the power of God was within and was going to wreak havoc on the Nazis. I mean, I believe that stuff, and I don't think you can be a filmmaker, a serious filmmaker, making audience popcorn movies unless you believe the stories you're telling. I haven't seen Duel in a long time, but I mean, my memory of Duel as a film is that I was really proud of it. I look back at it, number one, saying, how did I get all those shots in 12 or 13 days? How was that possible? To this day, I don't think I could do it again. If I had to go back right now and recreate Duel in 12, 13 days, I couldn't do it. It'd be impossible. I think I was so hungry back then. I was so ambitious. I was so excited about having been given this chance. I was so thankful to studio, especially George Eckstein and Wally Worsley for supporting me in this. I even used Wally Worsley. He came in and he did other movies, did E.T. with me. So I look back at it and say I couldn't do it that way again today, and I'm probably too smart to have done it that way again, which means a lot of the spontaneity would be left out. I would be the Europeans analyzing Duel and putting all those different levels of interpretation into it now. I think I'd be too headstrong about telling that story again. So sometimes you have to look back and say, you know, those early films are a mark and a measure of who I was back then. I mean, I'm not the same person today as I was back then. I always have held that nobody is the same person. Once you grow up and you have children, you have a family, and you learn more about the world you live in, and you make new friends, and you lose some old friends, I mean, you change. And I could never go back and make those early films as well as I made them when I was of the appropriate age and naivete to be working on subjects like that. But also, I couldn't have made Schindler's List or Private Ryan when I was 22, 23 years old either. So it's a fair trade-off.